You don't like your boyfriend seeing me braless in the dorm? Then he won't. I live in a college dorm on an all-female floor. I usually wear a bra if leaving the dorm building, but I'm not going to put on a bra under my shirt just to walk down the hall to the bathroom. A few days ago, I left my room and walked 10 yards down the hall to the water fountain, refilled my water bottle, and went back to my room. I was wearing a white tank top and no bra. The tank top was fitted, but not see-through, so you could only see the outline of my nips. There was a small group of people hanging out in the hall outside a few of the rooms, but I didn't think much of it, until around half an hour later, when I got a knock on the door from one of the girls I'd seen in the hall. She said something to the effect of, "Hey, so sorry to ask you this, but if you go out into the hall again, could you put a bra on? My boyfriend's out there and he was staring a little, so..." I'm super non-confrontational, so I was like, "Yeah, sure, sorry about that." And for the rest of that night, anytime I left my room, I put a bra or sweater on. And that was the end of it, or so I thought. The next day, my roommate told me she'd overheard the girl telling a few of her friends about the incident while in the bathroom. She said the girl was making it sound like I'd been purposely trying to seduce her boyfriend, wearing basically nothing, taking my time at the water fountain, posing to push out my tits, the whole works. When she left the bathroom, my roommate said the girl was actually acting it out at the water fountain, pretending to be me. That night, I passed the girl and some of her friends on my way to go brush my teeth. I wasn't wearing a bra, I was already in pajamas. The girl looked pointedly down at my chest, and all of them started giggling. But the last straw was when the entire dorm got an email from the RA yesterday, saying she'd gotten some anonymous complaints about people dressing inappropriately in the hallways, and asking that we all just make sure we're keeping things covered up. So here's where I got my petty little revenge. I knew that the girl's boyfriend doesn't go to college here. The girl and I were in the same orientation group and chatted a bit back then. I also knew that due to the pandemic, we aren't allowed to have non-student/family guests in the dorms this year. So I used the same anonymous complaint form to issue a complaint about people bringing their off-campus boyfriends into our dorm and them not wearing a mask. Masks are mandatory in the hallways, although not frequently enforced. This morning, the RA emailed again saying that due to anonymous complaints, they'd be enforcing the no off-campus guest rule by checking IDs of unfamiliar guests to make sure they were students from then on. Really, this girl should be thanking me. If she was concerned about her boyfriend seeing the vague outline of my tits in the dorm hallways, she no longer needs to worry. Apparently, booking a seat on a train is not a real booking if someone else decides to sit there. I was traveling from Edinburgh to London by train and had a booked window seat with a table. I got on the train to find 4 guys sitting at the table. The one in my seat that was clearly marked as booked refused to move as he was with his friends, and the train was packed. The ticket collector passed, and I asked him to help. He asked the guy to move, but he refused, and somehow that was that. "So what now?" I asked. "You can find another seat, but I have no power to move him, only the police and move him, and they will not turn up just to move someone out of a seat." There were no seats free in the carriage, and probably not many free on the train, so standing to London was a possibility. I'm going to take a seat in first class. Better surroundings, power sockets, and free tea and coffee. "You can't sit there. You don't have a booking." "Well, you could call the police to move me, but apparently they won't turn out to move someone out of a seat." I had a lovely trip with power for my laptop and a wide, comfy seat. My half-sister wanted to show up in a wedding dress to my engagement party, so I changed the party theme so she would fit right in. My half-sister, Heather, and I never really got along. We both are 24. My father left my mother for her mother, and we were born the same month, 20 days apart. It has always been weird. It doesn't help that Heather's mom hates me and my mom. By extension, Heather and I didn't have the best relationship. She has always tried to one-up me, even though we both have a similar economic background. I can give examples of this, but for the sake of the world limit, won't write them here. So now my fiancé and I got engaged last month and had our engagement party this Saturday. We had planned it originally as a casual formal event. Nice dresses, but not, "I am going to the Met Gala ball," nice. More like, "We are going to a good restaurant," nice. Anyway, my cousin hits me up saying she has to show me something. It was the picture of the dress Heather was going to wear. This dress? Jesus Christ. It can only be described as opulent. It was long and white, strapless with sewn-in crystals and golden accents. I'm pretty sure it's a wedding dress, but I can't be 100%. This made me really mad, so I decided, fuck that. I started texting people telling them that there had been a change of plans, and that instead of casual formal, I decided to make a costume party. My mother's side is crazy for Halloween, so they were immediately on board. I told my father via text and asked for him to relay the message to Heather, her mother, knowing full well that he would forget or leave it to the last minute. Saturday comes along. Guests start showing up, most of them in costumes. Some didn't have time to get one. We just provided them with fun hats and cheap wigs. Heather, my dad, and her mother come like 1 hour late. As soon as she notices that everyone was either wearing elaborate costumes or weird accessories, and she didn't stand out, she lost it. Especially when my fiancé came along and told her that her bride dress looked amazing for a cheap costume. She left crying, and her mother and my father told me that I was being childish, and I could have told Heather myself and not have tasked my father. For those interested, my fiancé was dressed as Bubbles, and I was dressed as Mojo Jojo. My mom and aunts went as Abba. Other memorable costumes were Luffy and Zorro, Ian Malcolm, and John Hammond and Jesus. I planted bamboo that overrun my neighbor's property over a security light. About 4 years ago, I used to live in a nice HOA in a small town in Texas and enjoyed having only one neighbor over my backyard fence. The plot was about 2 acres, and the other side of the backyard butted up to a hayfield. The stars were beautiful at night because of virtually no light pollution. Until the neighbor decided to install an incredibly bright security light over their back porch aimed right at my back patio and bedroom windows. I tried to ignore it at first and put shades in the bedroom, but out on the patio it was like having a bright LED headlight in your face all night. I consulted the HOA about adding a privacy addition to my fence to increase its height, and they said no because it's already at the 8 max allowed height. They said there was nothing in the bylaws or whatever about bright lights, so nothing they could do. Diplomacy. So I hated for this to be the thing where we finally had a formal greeting after 3 years of back porch waves, but I walked over and rang the doorbell with $20. I politely explained how the light was causing the aforementioned nuisance and asked if there was any way I could convince him to point the light down or in a different direction, and even offered to buy him a case of beer, the $20, out of goodwill, and even a new motion-sensing light. He seemed nice and agreed to point it down. But after waiting a month, nothing changed. I went back to have another polite conversation, and he said he had changed his mind and was going to leave it on every night and leave it pointed as is. Petty revenge. Needless to say, I was a bit upset diplomacy failed and started figuring out how to win. If the military taught me anything, there's always ways to adapt and overcome. So I started researching fast-growing plants to create big privacy walls and reading through the HOA bylaws and city-state ordinances about what I could or couldn't plant, and if there were any repercussions for encroachment across the property line. I quickly discovered running bamboo, despite being very invasive, would grow super fast to make the neighbor's house and light disappear from view, and there was nothing on the HOA/state/city books to prevent me from planting it or cause legal recourse if it spread and grew on his side on the fence. The only thing he could do is cut anything that grew on his side of the line. So I pulled the trigger and planted a bunch of golden bamboo, which grows and spreads crazy fast in Texas and grows up to 20 feet tall. I didn't care if it took over the fence line because his house is 15 feet from the fence, while mine was 50 yards away, so I planted a bunch right against the fence and only put root barrier on my side to prevent it spreading into my yard. Within 6 months, his house and light were gone from view, replaced by a pretty bamboo jungle row at the edge of my yard. Within 1 year, he complained it was growing into his yard via mailed letters. They went right into the trash with no response. He rang my doorbell once and I looked at him through the window, but just didn't answer the door. I unexpectedly sold the house and moved 2 years after planting for a career opportunity. It's been 2 years since I sold, and I just checked the property on Google Earth, and his entire backyard is bamboo. Scumbag neighbor broke into my vehicle and stole my stuff, so I returned the favor. I rented a duplex in my early 20s. My neighbor was a wannabe gangster type and made the mistake of breaking into my vehicle one night. I had a small SUV with a removable soft top, so the neighbor figured it would be easy pickings to just peel back the top and help himself to my stereo, amplifier, CDs, and some other misc stuff. I discovered the break-in early in the morning after it occurred. I knew for certain who the culprit was. We were not in a heavily populated area, and my neighbor was well known for thievery. I waited around for him to leave his place, and when the opportunity arose, I went around the back of the house and looked through the bedroom window to find that sure enough my stuff was sitting right on the floor in there. I instinctively tried the window, and as luck would have it, the sash went right up. Bingo. I hopped through and quickly surveyed the items laying around. It occurred to me that I could get some excellent revenge here if I played it right. So rather than just recoup my stuff and wind up in a fight over it, I borrowed a marker and proceeded to write my name on all my stuff, and also a few choice items of his just for good measure. I then climbed back out the window and waited. When he finally came back, I called for some police presence and explained to them how my vehicle got robbed, and I knew it was the neighbor due to seeing through the window. We knock on his door, and I can still remember the look on his face seeing me and the cop standing there. He was not even close to ready for the encounter, and almost certainly had drugs on him, so he was very cooperative given the circumstances. I politely explained that I know he broke into my vehicle, and I needed him to return my stuff immediately, or I will have to press charges. He went and retrieved my things, and I pointed out my name written on them to the officer. I asked about my other stuff while he looked back puzzled and dumbfounded. I rattled off the other couple of choice items of his that I also put my name on earlier. The look on his face while he handed over his stuff to me while the cop was standing there was priceless. Girl assumed I was hitting on her, gave her the same response she gave me. This was back in 08 or 09. I was in Quito, Ecuador. I was staying at a hostel and was there for just over 3 weeks. Less than a block away, there was an Irish pub. This pub has really good bar food that wasn't on the menu of a lot of other restaurants in the area, so because of that, it was a mixed crowd. Popular with locals and backpackers because the proximity to the hostel. I'm at the bar with some other guests from the hostel, and we are expecting a few more to join us. Next to me is a bar stool, and on the other side of the bar stool are 2 women talking. They're obviously friends. In Spanish, I ask the woman closest to me if she is using this empty chair, and is it okay if I grab it. Spanish is not my first language, but I can still speak it clearly and confidently, and grew up speaking it since I was a kid. She says to me in Spanish with a smirk on her face that she does not understand me, and she does not speak English. I ask for the chair again in Spanish while motioning to it, and she says again that she doesn't speak English. I ended up getting the chair from a high-top table that was behind us that no one was using. At this point, she turns to her friend and I hear them mumble, "I don't know why he's talking to me," and I hear them chuckling to themselves, assuming I was hitting on her, I guess, and she rejected me. Cue petty revenge. Throughout the evening, I know she heard me conversing in Spanish with the bartender, so by this time she knew I definitely spoke Spanish. The napkin dispenser is directly in front of me, and she asks me in Spanish if I can hand it to her. I look at her confused, and I point to the napkin dispenser, then look back at her and lean in a little as if I didn't hear what she said. She again says that she needs napkins, and if I can hand her the napkin dispenser, all in Spanish. I look at the dispenser and then her, and very clearly I say, "Lo siento, no hablo inglés." I'm sorry, I don't speak English. She gives me shocked Pikachu face, and she turned bright red, and then I give her the cold shoulder. "Don't flatter yourself, lady. I wasn't hitting on you. I just wanted the damn bar stool." Edit. No, the bar was not loud. There was music, but easy to carry on a conversation. Yes, I am sure I said it correctly. I am bilingual. Spanish was not my first language, and I typically don't write in it, but speaking it is fine for me, and have been since I was a kid. Yes, this story really happened. Roommates stopped contributing, so we left them nothing. This happened during my junior year of college. I, Claire, lived with 5 other women. I'll call them Abby, Brooke, Danny, Ella, and Fran. When we signed the lease on the house, we agreed to a 1-year deal, June 1st, May 31st. The house was off campus and unfurnished, so we needed things to make it feel like home. Prior to moving in, we all sat down and decided what we needed for the house and who was going to bring what, and also settled on a chore schedule. We also decided that we'd have a household supply fund set up so we could buy things we all would use like toilet paper, paper towels, dish detergent, and laundry detergent. As it turns out, Danny, Ella, Francesca, and I brought most of the stuff we needed like a couch, small dining table, dishes, silverware, drinking glasses, cookware, food storage containers, etc. Things went pretty well during fall semester. Shortly after that, however, things started to decline. Abby's boyfriend Andy basically moved in with us, and the two of them started acting like they owned the place. Left a dirty dish in the sink? They'd leave a passive-aggressive note about how rude it was to do that. Come home after the library closed at midnight? Abby and Andy went to bed at 10, and if you woke them up, there was hell to pay. Pretty soon, Brooke and her boyfriend Brad were acting in much the same way. By early February, it was clear to Danny, Ella, Fran, and me that we did not want to live with Abby and Brooke another year. The four of us found a different off-campus place and signed a lease. We let Abby and Brooke know, and from then on, the two of them, plus their boyfriends, went from partial jerks to complete jerks. They'd do things like stop the clothes washer mid-wash, take our clothes out, dump them on the floor, and start their own laundry. They'd use up all the hot water by taking super long showers. They'd write return to sender on our mail. They destroyed flowers our boyfriends sent or brought to us. They refused packages. They stopped contributing to the shared supply fund and stopped doing chores. About a week before Memorial Day, Ella got a call from the landlord on our new place saying the previous tenants had moved out and we could move in early if we'd like at no charge. Danny, Ella, Fran, and I discussed it and decided to get out of our current house ASAP, but didn't tell Abby and Brooke of our plans. Memorial Day weekend rolls around and Abby, Brooke, and their boyfriends head out of town to go camping while the rest of us put our plan into action. With the help of friends, Danny, Ella, Fran, and I got all of our stuff moved out. And when I say all, I mean all. Living room furniture, dining room furniture, dishes, silverware, cookware, food storage containers, baking supplies, shower curtain, rugs, lamps, vacuum, broom, dustpan, etc. We also decided that since neither Abby nor Brooke had contributed to the shared household supply fund since March, the toilet paper, paper towels, dish detergent, laundry detergent, and so forth was ours. So we took all of that too. Abby, Brooke, and their boyfriends were shocked to return from their camping trip to an empty house. What made our petty revenge even sweeter was that on their way home from the camping trip, all four of them got food poisoning and were really, really sick. The scathing texts we got about moving out unannounced and taking all shared household goods, especially the toilet paper, priceless. Danny, Ella, Fran, and I are great friends, still get a good laugh about the situation about 12 years later. None of us have heard from Abby or Brooke since graduation. Don't assume others don't speak Spanish. So, I'm a bridal stylist. I help people find their wedding gown. I love my job, and 99% of the time, it's a happy, wonderful job with great coworkers and customers. And then there's the 1%. I had a bride today who was very sweet, but just didn't connect with the gowns we had. That's okay. It happens sometimes. She was fine. But her mom, and somehow it's always the mom or the aunt, was decidedly not happy and decided to shit-talk me in Spanish the whole time. Does this woman know what she's doing? She's pulling nothing but ugly gowns. Said gowns were selected by the bride. I hope you don't ever get as fat as her. And so on. Lovely. Now I am whiter than a jar of mayo, and I don't necessarily look like I speak Spanish. However, my parents are from a Spanish-speaking country, even though they're not ethnically Hispanic. I knew a lot more as a kid, but I'll still know enough to get around. So I waited until the end, and as they were leaving, I said, I hope you have a great day. Please, feel free to come back anytime you'd like. We have lots more gowns you can go through if you'd like, in Spanish, to the bride and her mom. And oh man. You know how good it feels when you're in a fuck ton of pain, and the doctor finally gives you something that works, and you're suddenly not feeling any pain anymore. Or when you're craving the hell out of a specific flavor of ice cream and you manage to find it. Yeah, seeing the look on that bride's mom's face when she realized I heard and understood the entire hour of her ripping me to shreds was so much better. My new downstairs neighbor made the manager harass me. I hope he likes being woken up at 2 a.m. every night. I've lived in the same apartment with my boyfriend for almost 4 years. It's not the best apartment, but I love the location. I've never really had any problems here. I'm a quiet neighbor that stays to myself. My new downstairs neighbor has made several stupid complaints. Like complaints me running my garbage disposal. But the most recent one was ridiculous. He went and told management that there's been issues with my balcony. I got a call last week asking if I've been throwing anything over my balcony. I told the manager absolutely not. There's plants down below, so I had dumped a water bottle off into the plants before, but that's not harming anyone. Because of this call, I went out to my balcony to investigate. I noticed my flower vase had fallen over, and some water may have spilled down. Not too big of a deal. There wasn't too much water in the vase when the wind knocked it over. I think this is the end of that silly complaint, but I was wrong. The weekend passes, and I get a nasty notice on my door. The notice said pet violation for not picking up after my dog, $50 fine, and stating I'm at risk of getting my lease terminated because of my violations. The only problem is, I don't have a dog. I emailed the property manager and said, I do not have a dog, therefore I'm not paying this fine. She sends back a ridiculous email stating that she's received several complaints, I only have one downstairs neighbor, about urine coming from my balcony, so she assumed I was letting my dog, that I don't have, pee on my balcony. Then she says, since I don't have a dog, that means me or my boyfriend are peeing on our balcony, and that I'm still in violation of my lease. This was just comical at this point. My boyfriend and I have never done this. We've never had any complaints in our 4 years here. It just so happens as soon as I got a new downstairs neighbor, the complaints came rolling in. Here's where the petty revenge kicks in. I work night shift, so I don't go to bed until around 6 a.m. Every morning around 6 a.m., I hear my new neighbor leaving for work. My boyfriend and I decided to incorporate a new 2 a.m. workout when I get home from work, consisting of jumping jacks, running in place, and all sorts of fun stuff, just for my lovely downstairs neighbor. I've informed the leasing office that I won't be renewing my lease in December due to this. The next 3 months for my new neighbor is going to be hell. Magazine subscriptions. This happened about 15 years ago when the internet and e-com were still young. I had this supervisor who was a real douchebag. Once he asked me to help him out at the last minute and take a particularly shitty shift, and I did because I was a team player. The anticipated business level did not materialize, so I left at my scheduled time. To be clear, I did not leave early and abandon my colleagues. I left at the end of the shift. I did not stay late. Couple of days later, douchebag schedules a meeting with me, and when I arrive, I see the 2 owners are there as well. DB starts calling me out, accusing me of abandoning my colleagues and falsifying the timesheet. I ask him if he is on crack. He keeps berating me and questioning my commitment and loyalty. The 2 owners sit in stunned silence but don't defend me. I was employee number 2. He was number or something like that, so eventually I said I had enough and got up and went home. He sent me an email later that day saying I was suspended for 3 days, so don't come into the office tomorrow. I ignored that too. The next morning when I got in, he was surprised to see me and told me to go home. I basically told him to go fuck himself. I no longer recognized him as my supervisor. My pay never got docked either. Office tensions were high after that, but I just went about my business like he wasn't there. He continued to be a douchebag, but I just bided my time. I'm very patient. About a year later, I noticed his T4 envelope on his desk. No one was around, so I palmed it, and that gave me his home address and social insurance number. Also learned I made about triple his salary, made me feel good. His house was only a short side trip for me on my way home, so I would leave early, go to his house and intercept his mail. I would take it home, steam it open, scan it, and seal it back up. Next day I would swing by and put it back in his mailbox. It took about 3 months, but I eventually got 2 credit card statements, and I was able to determine he got his CC statements around the 10th of the month, got his utility bills too, and a letter from social services notifying him he was going to get his wages garnished for non-payment of child support. Once a douchebag, always a douchebag. I had been putting together a list of URLs for the most vile and disgusting porno websites hawking magazine subscriptions, featuring topics such as bestiality, golden showers, and scat, among many others. Readers, I am not judging. I spent a Saturday night mid-month with a bottle of rum, subscribing him to every magazine, both print and online, that I could find. In those days, there was very little credit card security. If you had the full card number and billing postal code, you were in. There were no CVV or PIN numbers. I knew he wouldn't see his statements for over 3 weeks. The following Monday, I canceled his utilities, telling them I was going abroad for an extended period and wanted to suspend the services. I made it a point to be exceptionally rude to the utility companies, so the account would be flagged, hopefully as douchebag. Also got his vehicle registration reminder and vehicle insurance renewal, both of which I did not return. To DB's credit, he never said a word, that I heard in the office about the shit going down in his personal life, but I knew he was suffering, and that was good enough for me. About 6 months later, on a whim, One night after a few cocktails, I tried signing him up for more stuff and was surprised to find both his credit cards still worked. He hadn't closed the cards. I signed him up for a bunch more magazines but made the mailing address the office. Signed him up for a number of online porn sites and used his work email. That got people's attention, and not long after DB was no more. I win. Dressed overly casual at a designer store so that the rude sales rep wouldn't get commission. I don't typically buy a lot of designer clothing, but when I do go shopping, I dress pretty casually. Last week I was strolling through the mall, and there was designer backpack on display that caught my attention. I went inside the store, wearing a hoodie and ripped jeans, and went to inquire about the price of the backpack. I waited around for 10 minutes for someone to help me until I decided to go up to one of the sales representatives myself. She told me to wait because she was helping another customer, so I sat down and waited. I saw her in the corner of the store just standing, not doing anything. I decided to wait another 5 minutes for her to come back, but she never did. I walked back up to her and told her I wanted to inquire about the backpack. I asked her if she could bring one from the back room so I could take a closer look at it. She told me that she wouldn't be able to do that unless I was planning on purchasing the item. She seemed annoyed with my request. Before I could say anything else, she quickly walked away to help another customer. I'm quite young, 25 years old, and I could tell she didn't think I was serious about purchasing it and didn't want to waste her time. I would have actually purchased it then and there if she hadn't been so dismissive. A few days later, I went back into the store. This time I made sure to dress it even more casually than before. I walked in with a pair of sweatpants, running shoes, a tank top, and zip-up. The same lady was working that day and turned her back to me as soon as I walked in. I went up to one of the other sales representatives. This guy was younger, smiling, and seemed eager to help. And I told him I wanted to purchase the backpack, and he gladly went inside and got for me. He even asked if I'd like to take a look at it before buying. I thanked him, and he checked me out. The store manager was also by the cashier, and I let him know that I came in last week, and that the lady wouldn't let me see the product before purchasing it. He was upset to hear this, and told me this wasn't the first time he had received a complaint about her. The item was a few grand, and all the commission went towards the junior. He was so kind and grateful. She avoided eye contact with me after she got told off by her manager, and I smiled at her as I walked out of the store. Don't judge a book by its cover. My boyfriend looked up spoilers to our favorite video game, so I did too. My boyfriend and I play Zelda, Breath of the Wild together. I am a take your time and enjoy the ride kind of gal, while he is a let's look up how to beat this game right now kind of guy. Because his way ruins all the fun, we came up with a rule. No looking up spoilers. We were looking for a particular challenge, the 8 heroine side quest for my fellow Zelda nerds, for a very long time. Suddenly my boyfriend said, I did something bad. I looked up where to go. I'm so sorry. I just couldn't take it anymore. I told him it was fine, but that he could not tell me what he had seen. He agreed. I then excused myself to the bathroom and looked up the location as well. I then spent the next hour and a half wandering so close to the location without ever making it there. I could see him squirming around in his seat every time I got close. When I jumped off the cliff the statue was built into, gliding down to the base of the statue and continuing on without turning around to look at it, I thought he was going to explode. He was clenching his hair in both fists and biting his lower lip, trying to contain himself. That's when I caved and told him what I had done. He thought it was hilarious and told me about how he wanted more than anything to yell, "Turn around! What are you doing?" We had a good laugh about it. He hasn't looked up a spoiler since. A barmaid laughed at my drink order. I was on holiday with my son, and we were watching the football in a bar in the evening. I don't really drink, but do enjoy a cocktail while on holiday. The server came by and asked if we wanted drinks. I asked for a pina colada, and she sniggered a little at the order and kind of laughed out an okay, then walked off to make it. This annoyed me a little. I'm just a grown man wanting to drink a tasty cocktail. What's wrong with that? When she brought the drink back, I got my petty revenge. As she was placing the drink on the table, I said, "My mom loved these. God rest her. I always have one on the anniversary of her death to remember her." She looked horrified and tried to shuffle off quickly, so I asked her for a cocktail stirrer, so she had to come back again. When she came back, I took a sip from the straw, kissed my hand, and pointed to the sky, trying to look sad. She was so visibly uncomfortably, I had to stifle my own laughs. She noticeably avoided our table multiple times after this. I put vegetables in all my food to stop my roommate's kid from eating it. Mom threatens legal action. I, 26 years old female, live in a rented house with a single mother, 30 years old female, and her son. I had another person living with me, but they moved out and the mother moved in. I don't mind living with her and her kid. It's fine and we kind of do our own thing. I spend a lot of time at my boyfriend's place or working. Our work schedules collide so we really don't interact much, but when we do, it's fine. No issue there. I want to start with saying that she clearly struggles financially, but I don't think it's an excuse. I don't make lots of money either. However, I've noticed that my food would go missing or portions would be taken from it. I assumed it was her kid, so I asked her if she'd stop him from eating my food. I was calm about it and she just said she would. It didn't really upset me when it first started. It started getting annoying when I'd get home from work and expect to have a meal's worth of leftovers in the fridge only to see it picked through or just gone. I kept bringing it up, and she started getting annoyed with me bringing it up. Just from observing them, I realized that neither of them ever eat vegetables, and judging by the food that would get picked through and the food that would be untouched. Anything with green in it was avoided. Orange chicken would be gone, but chicken and broccoli would be untouched. So I started putting vegetables in everything. I find vegetables to be delicious, and anything green or not a potato does not get eaten. So I could mix some bell peppers into the food, and it would be fine. I make a big portion of vegetables pretty frequently anyway, so I just started putting it in everything I eat. If I had leftover mashed potatoes, I'd pour green beans in and mix it up. If I had leftover cheesy bacon fries, I'd pour broccoli all over it and mix it in. Usually my homemade stuff has vegetables in it, but I started making sure everything did. I made a pot of mac and cheese, the kids' favorite thing, and poured in roasted Brussels sprouts, which is actually delicious to me, and I'm eating more vegetables, so it's a win-win. She had been seeming annoyed, but we were all home when I made the pot of mac and cheese. She was in the living room and saw me get out the Brussels sprouts and was like, "What are you going to do with that?" And I poured them in. She said I was being greedy and annoying. I just said, "I like Brussels sprouts," and that was it. She said, "We need food," and I told her to go get some, or stop buying only prepackaged things and your money will go further. I think she sees this as some big act of revenge, but I just simply want to be able to eat my food. Also want to add that the sharing is not the issue. It's expecting to have food there, and it's not. So often I'd be working a long day and get home expecting to have a meal's worth of food, and it all be gone. Or I wake up in a rush and had my food ready to eat in the morning only to find it gone. So now I have to skip breakfast. If she would simply text sometimes, "Hey, is it okay if we eat asterisk food item asterisk?" I would know and know to make other plans. I would stop for food or know I have to whip something up when I get home. Also, I think eating the last of someone else's food is crazy and rude. If someone makes a big pot of something and you ask for a serving, sure. But if someone made something and there is one serving left and you eat it without permission, that is evil as hell. Update. So I have been steadfast with putting vegetables in everything. I've put vegetables in things I've never even thought of. This has carried on, and the mom calls me a jerk, but will not verbalize that she is eating my food. She just sees me making a lasagna and adding celery and bell peppers and the layers of fumes off to the side. The only thing I can't add vegetables to is snacks like chips or if I bake brownies or cookies. However, this is easily remedied by putting baked goods in a Tupperware and keeping them in my room. Same with chips. As I have previously stated, the sharing is not the issue. Recently, the kid knocked on my door and asked if he would have a bag of microwave popcorn. I said yes and gave him one. All of this would be way less annoying if she'd just text, "Hey, can I have some of this?" and waited for my response before just helping herself. I do feel for the mom because she clearly struggles with cooking and trying new foods. She is older than me and winces at the thought of biting into anything green. And it is spreading to her kid, but it's no excuse. A few days ago, I was making taco meat out of ground beef. And like usual, she was looking without looking. She was off to the side, watching my every move but trying her to look normal. I made a dish the day before that involved sautéed mushrooms and cut up peppers. So when the meat was almost ready, I opened the fridge and she freaked when she saw me holding the mushrooms. She said, "Son's name, hates mushrooms," and I just poured them in the pan and mixed along with the cut up peppers. This caused her to react in a way I'd never seen from her before. She was yelling and stomping around the kitchen while the kid just watched. Felt bad for the kid to have to see his mom like that. People were worried about her tampering with my food. I don't think she's the kind to do that, but if she did, I would report that right away. She was flipping out, but she didn't snatch my food or knock anything over. She was opening and slamming cabinets, and it was all very silly. Then she started going off about how she's going to get the authorities involved. I just told her sure, and that she needs to relax. She seemed genuinely upset and stressed, and I told her that I understand being a single mom is hard, but she needs to use her government assistance more responsibly. She'll come home with cold mac and cheese, sushi and chicken from the grocery store prepared foods and blow all of it on that. I suggested food pantries and buying ingredients that last a while like potatoes. She said I was being condescending and I always have food to eat. This is to address the just make a portion of your food and set it aside for her and the kid. I do not make enough money to regularly feed 2 other people. If every now and then she asked for some of my leftovers, sure. But this is a consistent thing that was happening. It's not simple as giving her leftovers that I won't eat anyway. If I make a pot of something, I expect live off of that for the next few days. If it is eaten, then my money is messed up and I have to go shopping again and budget for more food. Wastes my time and money. Signed a jerk neighbor up for a cult. Several years ago, my father-in-law was on the downward slide health-wise, so me and the wife and 2 kids moved into his house to remodel it and help take care of him. The house had been gutted by fire about 20 years before and sat in a state of, we'll get to it, as he lived in the mother-in-law apartment attached to it. One of the first days I was there, the neighbor came up to me and started talking shit. He thought I was the contractor, and he was basically telling me the people here can't afford to pay me. I let it slide and didn't correct him. I was after all doing the work. But after a few weeks he saw me leaving for work and figured it out. I had a large dumpster brought in and put on the lawn, as many do when doing a remodel. The lady I'd dealt with to get it called me about an hour after it had been dropped off to say there had already been someone calling them to complain about it, but things were all handled properly. It was only there a week and picked up on the next trash cycle, but she still received a call a day. During this time, I had found his old recycling containers had been thrown over the fence with trash in it about a year or 2 before. So this asshat has been throwing trash into his sick elderly neighbor's yard for who knows how long, and now it's my mess to deal with. Having had worse neighbors, grew up next to a double murderer, I just put it all in the dumpster. I finished the remodel, cleaned up the yard, and even made a spot where I could pull an old pickup and restore it with my father-in-law as a guide. 2 days after the truck showed up, city enforcement came by about a complaint about the truck being on an unimproved surface, so I improved the surface by adding gravel. They then came out a week or 2 later to make sure I had made the improvements. When the code enforcement officer she had let slip that the grumpy guy next door must really have it out for you, I realized I'd had enough. I copied his business name and address off of his truck. I went and got a $25 Visa gift card and set it up to donate $1 a month in his name, with home address and business name and address attached to it, to the Church of Scientology. Sure, I was giving some money to a cult, but I felt it was worth it. Now I had no way of telling how well it worked. But he's moved since then. The new neighbor is super nice, and she has asked about the previous people being Scientologists, as she had gotten a couple of weird magazines and newsletters for the previous owners. I hope they still have his business address. I made my manager's ugly baby uglier. Years ago, I worked for a large retail chain under your typical promoted because he's one of the boys manager. He didn't do much that actually needed doing in our department, and even foisted things like employee reviews, product resets and counts, etc. off on me. He mostly hung out shooting the shit with his buddies and chatting with customers, although he didn't sell much because he always tried to push everyone towards the highest end product, even if a more moderate one would suit the customers better. The company rewarded him with prizes like trips and gadgets for our high sales. Sales that I largely made, with a team I trained. And then he would brag about all the cool stuff he got. I didn't like him much. One thing he loved talking about constantly was his baby, maybe 9 months old. He even made a picture of the little tyke, the wallpaper, on our display computer. I get being a proud papa, but on top of me already being annoyed with him for being a shitty boss, his baby was weird looking. Nothing was wrong with the baby health-wise, but it was bug-eyed and big-headed like its daddy. This was especially highlighted because babies are already naturally a little like that, and this kid was like if Megamind fucked a pug. And I had to look at a picture of it all day, and all the customers saw it. So I went into a photo editing software and increased the size of the kid's eyes by about another 10%. Not enough for Daddy to notice, but enough that it was startling if you were seeing the picture for the first time. Uncanny Valley vibes. People would subtly react when Bossman showed them the picture and talk about the kid, like they wanted to say something, but absolutely knew they should not. It was small, it was petty, and I still giggle about it years later. Hopefully the kid grew up to look like Mama. My project partner didn't do anything for the project, so I made sure he was held responsible for it. When I was in 7th grade, I was at a private school, and for a project for one of my classes, I got paired up with the worst person in my class. Over the weeks of the project, the PowerPoint presentation that we had shared with each other was only touched once by him, and all he did was create a new slide, left it blank. I was pissed. For the first time ever, I absolutely refused to do all the work. My idiot of a partner thought I was doing all the work for him and smiled at me every time classes started, looking smug. He never even bothered to check the PowerPoint. Little did he know that I had already informed our teacher, and that teacher gave me his blessings to just present my part, and I would be graded on that alone. The day to present came, and we were to present our projects to the entire school. Before the presentation started, he came up to me and asked if he could see the PowerPoint so he could prepare to speak his part. I just glared at him so hard, he visibly paled and went back to his seat, where I continued to give him the stink eye the whole time until it was our time to present. Luckily, I was in charge of the first half of the PowerPoint, so I started things off. I knew I hit it out of the park, based on how our teacher was nodding his head from the back of the room. At the end of my last time, I turned and looked at my partner, who had gone pale despite all of his freckles. All right, insert partner name here. Ready to present your part? I didn't bother waiting for a response and just clicked the clicker. A blank slide showed up on the screen, exactly what he had contributed to the project, and then the PowerPoint ended. It took a few seconds for people to realize it was over, and there was the general hubbub of confusion. Finally, the principal stepped up and asked my partner what was going on. Mr. Freckles looked away and mumbled something about it being on a flash drive left upstairs in his backpack. He was allowed to leave the room to go retrieve it. I stood there, in front of the whole school, smiling to myself, for 10 minutes. The idiot still hadn't returned, so my teacher suggested we move on with the presentations. A couple of teachers left to go find my partner, who was quickly found hiding in a closet in one of the classrooms upstairs. I got a 98% on the project, and the idiot got a big, fat 0. He ended up failing the class and had to redo the year. Before I left the private school and went back to public schools for HS, he had managed to get kicked out of the school program, and I never heard from him again. Edit. To clarify, I was a 13-year-old brat with autism and a very strong malicious streak. I held grudges like hell, but nowadays I'm pretty much over it the next day after someone wrongs me. Don't ruin my weekend. So 2 years ago, me and a group of friends rented a condo in a popular tourist town for a long weekend. We paid a pretty penny, but the location was perfect for our needs. When we got there, the building and condo were both pretty underwhelming, but we didn't care. It was just a place to sleep, and we wouldn't be spending much time there. When I say underwhelming, I really mean the building was unsafe. The exterior egress stairwells had sections rotted through, loose railings, you name it. Not long after checking in and getting settled, we were able to figure out that this place was going to be a problem. The Karen neighbor upstairs demanded we move a vehicle from the unloading zone because it had been there too long. It had been there for about 20 minutes, and we were still unloading food. She was quick to inform us that she was the president of the COA, and if we step out of line again, she will have us removed without a refund. Right after this, a black pickup truck pulled up, and she beelined to talk to the driver, who never got out of his vehicle. Later that afternoon, another group checked into the condo next to us, but Karen wasn't there when they checked in, so they didn't get the same uppity treatment. Our group left to go out to dinner and ended up staying out pretty late. When we got back, everything was quiet and we were lights out not long after. The next day, the condo next to us is already getting after it pretty early. This is a pretty busy weekend in this particular town, and they definitely have other friends in town too. Swimming, loud music, really not bothering us though. We keep noticing that black pickup driving by almost hourly. We assume he's probably a local that lives in the neighborhood and don't think anything of it. We go out again for dinner and head back to the condo to grab a pregame beer or two before going out for the night, and it's a madhouse. The condo next to us is having a party that is spilled into every open space on the property. We go into our condo, lock the doors, and snap a few pictures, videos, in case we have to show our host that we were not involved. As we're sitting in our condo finishing our beers before we head out, no music on, football was on TV, the door slams open and we're greeted with a screaming, "What the fuck are you assholes doing?" from a guy that barges in, key in hand, with Karen watching from outside the door. We immediately spring up ready for a fight. We don't know this guy, and at first thought he was with the party and broke down our door. He then identifies himself as the host, condo owner, and again starts screaming at us. As it turns out, Karen told him we were hosting this large party, not bothering to take notice that it was the condo next to us. She piggybacks off of him screaming at us that we're destroying the condo and need to leave. We asked them to step outside and we will come out to talk numerous times, all while we're now recording. But they both refuse, just repeating, "Get the fuck out, leave," at us. So we call the cops. When he realizes that my one friend is on the phone with the dispatcher, the owner catches some clarity and reality smacks him. He begs for my friend to hang up, but he refuses. He immediately changes his tone and yells at Karen to go back upstairs to her unit. The police show up, a few cars since the initial call was for someone who was irate and forced their way into our condo. They see right away what's going on, break up the large party, and ask us nicely if we can work things out with our host, who has pulled a full 180 and is trying to smooth everything over. At this point, we realize that the black pickup belongs to our host, and he tells us the reason he was driving by almost hourly was that Karen kept calling him complaining about us. This whole time, Karen is out on her balcony chirping, saying we were doing stuff that we weren't, citing COA violations, definitely half shot in the ass herself. We inform our host that we're going to vacate and handle the issue through the third party we booked through. He doesn't like this and is trying to hide his rage while being nice in front of the officers that are still there. He insists if we vacate, we won't be entitled to any refunds and all the usual BS they say when they know they're wrong. We show him the rental contract that says the owner can't enter the condo, except for certain exceptions that don't apply. So we round up our stuff and check into a motel that the third party's customer service found for us. Revenge had to be doled out here. I just couldn't let it go. So I sit down and do it the right way. What the condo owner and Karen didn't know is, I used to work in this town when I was younger. Or should I say I worked for the town, specifically doing code enforcement, building, fire subcode, fire safety, and local ordinance. I filed a complaint with the town against the COA that was to this day one of the longest they've ever seen. The inspector went out and actually red tagged the property, meaning uninhabitable until repairs are made, for some of the worst violations. In total, the COA had to spend over $70,000 to fix their violations, in addition to the costs of the penalties, fines, and reapplying for their license to rent. It cleaned out their coffers and each unit had to shell out cash. There was a rumor that Karen was investigated for stealing from the COA, but I never heard if it went anywhere. Oh, and the third-party app fully refunded us. If you're going to be an asshole, you're going to pay for it. My high school revenge story. I didn't really have any serious bullies until I was a junior in high school. Small things, nothing really worth doing anything over. That all changed when I suddenly grew fairly well endowed near the end of the school year. It was completely unexpected since I thought I was finished growing at that point. The spinal curve of my back is also sharper than normal, so it makes my butt look big, which actually caused a couple health issues, yay. Several other girls started to turn on me. I assume they were just jealous. High school girls are the absolute worst. There was one particular girl, Allison, who was absolutely relentless. She spread rumors about me about how I was sleeping with every guy I could, sleeping with the teachers to get better grades. Honestly, almost everything you could think of. The sheer amount of rumors made a lot of people realize they were just BS. Yes, it was really that many rumors. But there were still people that made fun of me. One day I was getting my English book out of my locker, and Allison came up and started to berate me. For some reason, she was extra angry that day. At this point, I stopped really caring and would just ignore her whenever she talked about me. But this day, she decided to punch me right in my breasts, which really, really hurt. After being doubled over in pain for a few moments, I decided to do something about it. I closed my locker and started walking backwards while acting like I was still in a huge amount of pain. Allison was still spewing things at me and was slowly following along. I eventually walked to a door and Allison was standing in that circle on the ground that marks where the door swings open. I then grabbed the door handle and threw the door open as hard as I could at her. She was too busy berating me to even see it coming. It hit her straight on in the face. Bear in mind, this is one of those thick and heavy wooden doors that are usually at schools. It broke her nose and knocked her to the ground. She started wailing as blood was pouring from her nose. Thinking back, I really shouldn't have done that since I could have killed her. But at that moment, it was the most gratifying thing in the world. I still don't feel that bad about doing it. Naturally, I got in a huge amount of trouble and almost got expelled. I don't know how I didn't get expelled, honestly. I was suspended for 2 weeks. My dad was impressed in a way, but my parents still punished me for it. If you're reading this, Allison, fuck you, you horrible, horrible bitch. I hope it hurt.